Howdy, friends. It is a hump day edition of Dirty Air with Rodney Rodriguez. Rodney Rodriguez is right here with you in the great state of Texas. I'm going to talk a little bit of what we just went through for the last week and a half. Some Daytona. Daytona, the topic of conversation, is what Dirty Air will be about today. And as the dirt on sports, clean air is good. Times like this, Dirty Air just a tad bit better. And again, anytime during the program, if you would like to chime in, you can hit the text line because that text line is alive and rolling. If you're not able to catch video, or if you are watching video, hit it up right there. 931-1724. I talk like I'm just my Central Texas folks are checking in. 512-931-1724 is the text line if you want to be a part of this conversation that we're going to have this morning. It's gonna drop this morning, but I'm sure the conversations will go on throughout the day. And again, I do ask, if you don't mind, if you would give me a follow on some socials on X. It's at the Rodney R, the _ Rodney R on Instagram. Very interactive with folks. So if you choose to be a part of that with me, I would love to have some conversations with you. Also, if you are on the YouTube, Twitch, and different streams that you may be catching this on, Facebook as well, there's a QR code up at the top of your screen over on the left-hand side. If you would like that, that will take you to the my page, RodneyRodriguezSports.com, RevledUpSportsShow.com, and that's also the place where you can get Dirty Air merchandise. So be sure to do that, courtesy of my friends at On Demand Shirts in San Antonio. All right, so let's dive into the conversation. Coming off of Daytona, and Tyler Reddick, the winner in what I saw something, I guess, on Tuesday to where, yeah, you always get how do you rate the race? What percentage, the grade that you give the race. And I was very much going to be somewhere in the, in the low 70s with what we had in this race. And here's the number one thing that I think was so successful about this Daytona 500 is, number one, I completely applaud whomever was involved. And I know that it was a lot of the sanctioning body. I know that TV had to be involved in bumping this thing up an hour. And I think that this only proves, and I understand why these races start at the time that they're starting, with what TV's looking to do with their packages to push stuff into prime time. However, I think what a lot of people don't understand, or don't really want to understand, when it comes to the NFL does this really, really well, to where you're watching a Sunday football game, whether it's on NBC or Fox, and they're pushing their 325 Central game right up into the doorstep of the primetime window. But the thing about it is, with a football game, it's not very often that you're going to have a postponement, or you're going to have a delay, or anything like that. Where with NASCAR and IndyCar, for that matter, that's about to get fired up here in a matter of days, that those postponements happen, and you can never really factor that in. But the fact that everyone was so quick on their feet to go ahead and make the move and push this thing up, and that I think that's to be applauded for the folks that want to complain about Fox's coverage of the race. I think that does Fox really care about NASCAR? I think the fact that they worked with their local affiliates and everyone else to go ahead and make this happen, I think that tells you their commitment to NASCAR, because everything essentially pushed up, and you were able to get the race in, and for the first time in a long time, you got 200 laps of racing, 500 miles of it, and you got it all at one time. It seems like all too often in the most recent past, you've had the command, you've had all the pomp and circumstance that happens before the race and pre-race concerts and all that stuff. All of that always works out. You fire the engines up, you go 12, 14 laps if you even get that far, and then you're automatically right into a rain delay, and you're into doing all the bullshit that happens during those delays, where you're having to do driver interviews and having to replay past specials and all of that, and replaying past races. None of that happened. And I know that the numbers haven't come out. I've seen some numbers for the duels, or for the duel, I guess, because it's all one now, that was a healthy number. I think it was pretty flat based on what the number was last year, but a good number. So I assume that these numbers for NASCAR are going to be healthy. I think they're going to be better than what they have been in the past, simply because of the fact that if you invested a little bit of time to catch, whether it was Miranda Lambert or any of the stuff that was happening, that will catch some viewers' eyes that are not a typical race fan. You saw the start of the race and you locked in and you probably kept watching. And I expect those numbers and suspect that they're going to be better than normal. And I think that in and of itself is something that NASCAR needs to be applauded for the way that they handled all that. The racing is the racing that you're going to get when you come to these speedway races. This is there's a lot of fallout coming out of this. And Tyler Reddick, what a job for him to win. And if you want to find those great stories, the Tyler Reddick, the fact that Tyler Reddick has just won himself a Daytona 500 is exceptional. With the Jordan brand and the Jordan effect seems to be what's blowing up mainstream media right now with the fact of what he's done, and all the while the NBA is still stumbling over themselves with different formats of the All-Star game to try to make that something that folks will buy into, which I did catch a little bit of that on replay and some breakdown of that. And I do talk all sports on the show, even though this one is dedicated solely to the 500 and the NASCAR. But I think the NBA actually did a really good thing with what they did on the All-Star game. I think they may have finally found something that's going to be a little look. Kawhi Leonard sold out for that thing. What's that tell you? That tells me that obviously they're doing something right. But Tyler Reddick, not only with the heartbreak that he had last year, so much expected out of the 45 team with 23-11 after a Final Four appearance the year before in the NASCAR, the now defunct NASCAR playoffs. But so much of that on the personal side, with the baby, with Rookie, that everything that the family went through there, you had to when folks question performance on the racetrack by a team or a driver or different things, a lot of times you have to look at the extenuating circumstances that may be happening off the track. The best example I can give you is when you had a Jeff Gordon slump that folks were like, what's going on with Gordon? Well, he had some personal stuff that was going on, and that will affect even if the team, even if your race team is working at full capacity and at full effect and all of that there's going to be, so if there's some personal distraction or personal situations that you're dealing with, it's going to affect you on the racetrack. I mean, you folks, we buckle in, we put those helmets on, we put, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, golf, I don't care what it is. Tiger Woods, look at that guy coming off of his personal situations. We never quite saw the same Tiger Woods, even though there were health situations there that were affecting that. But Tyler Reddick had a lot of stuff that was going on last year, and to see him bounce back and win that race in that fashion, I think was just so great. Tyler Reddick's a good dude. That's one of those guys where it's a really cool personality. And when we talk about the future of NASCAR moving forward, and we're looking for that personality aspect that seems to be missing right now in the sport, this is a guy that I think with this win, as he's going to be propelled now, because he is always going to be introduced as a Daytona 500 champion. And the thing about it is this dude has a really, really cool personality. This is a funny guy that I think people can kind of latch on to if you haven't already, right there with Ryan Blaney and folks go, if Chase Elliott would have won this race, I think that the pizzazz would have been great, because that's the people's champion. That's Bill Elliott's kid. But when you come to personality, and when you come to some of that stuff that folks are yearning for NASCAR, and Chase Elliott, great race car driver, great guy. But when it comes to electrifying, he's more the Jimmy Johnson type, with the difference being that he doesn't have that resume at this point that Jimmy Johnson had. In all the years that Jimmy Johnson was boring and plain and vanilla, he really didn't have to be funny, outgoing, or whatever, because he was tenacious on the racetrack. Tyler Reddick is a guy that is all of that. And Tyler Reddick is a guy that is really good on super speedways, as we just saw. Tyler Reddick is one hell of a road course racer. Tyler Reddick is a short track racer. Tyler Reddick comes off of the dirt tracks. So I think NASCAR is one of NASCAR's newest superstars, if he wasn't already, was thrust into the limelight with just a big time win in the manner that he did it. And, applauding Tyler Reddick. I'm really excited for the guy. I'm really excited for the team. And I think the underlying feature to me was of the 500 that at the end of this, so much going into the season, everything that I felt during Speed Week was it seemed like the whole vibe. Vibe is a word that's used all the time right now in this new society. Vibe, the feeling, how we're taking things in. The vibe to me was that it was a lot of togetherness, and it was like a deep sigh of relief and kind of like a new beginning for NASCAR. We saw the promos that I've talked about in the past, to where it was like NASCAR branding themselves as you go look, and it's like the moonshiners, and trying to pull back in some of what has been lost in the past. Are they going to get all that back? No, because you can go to X and you can look in different places, and it does not matter. It matters not what NASCAR does. You're not going to get some of those people back, because the car's different, and it's not the 60s, 70s, 80s, even early 90s NASCAR. But the simple thing is, there's no way to get that back. But what I really have felt throughout the last month, throughout the last 30 days, is NASCAR really has made an effort to pull in some of that old effect, some of that grassroots that has been missing. And so much of the conversation that I hear is, NASCAR needs to dig into the roots, dig into the local stuff, and dig into that stuff. A lot of that is with, I think NASCAR has tried to do that in the past, and NASCAR, Steve O'Donnell has talked about that they shot themselves in the foot with everything they were trying to do, with a lot of the branding and with the playoffs and all of that was a mistake, and they have totally owned it. But I think that one thing that NASCAR has also made a mistake in doing is, if you dig into a pool that doesn't really want you. It's like you go to a pond, you want to go fishing, and you know that that tank hasn't been stocked in a long time. You can throw live bait, you can throw minnows, you can throw top water lures, you can throw everything at it, and nothing is going to bite, because there is nothing there that wants to take the bait. And I think that a lot of the short track and grassroots stuff has been that they've kind of tossed some stuff out, but people don't want to take the bait. And I think what they're doing now is they've taken a total different approach to that, to where what they have done is they're throwing stuff out, but maybe more in their own small lake. And they're hoping that some of those bass, catfish, whatever it is, that they're going to swing over and find that. And I think that that's really the way to do it, because it makes no difference whatsoever if you're going to go try to chase something that's not going to be very receptive to anything you've done. Because as we talk about socials and we talk about the different aspects of what goes on, if the taste in the mouth is already bad of the consumer, it's going to be really hard to win them over. You can use all the breath mint that you want and mouthwash. You can't get that nasty taste or that bad taste that those people have for, in this case, NASCAR out. So you just find different ways to do it. And that's really what I saw throughout the past week and a half, since Bowman Gray. You get Bowman Gray out of the way, and I have to tell you, after Bowman Gray, it was very much a thought to where I'm like, oh man, we're off to a really crazy start right here, where everything that could go wrong did, and then some. Snow, sleet, ice. Come on, man. How often does that happen with NASCAR? Not very often. But I think the rebound with Daytona, everything from the TV coverage to the marketing to the activation, was working. And I think it was a deep sigh of relief. It's a very together we can do anything thing right now, is what it seemed like with Daytona. It seems like there's new energy in this. Everything seems to have new energy, is what I really felt. The mood on Sunday seemed to be electric. Those grandstands were packed. And I've seen the conversations again, to where it's like the race was a sellout. There were 150,000 people on property on Sunday. combined with grandstands, I believe, and infield camping. Infield was packed, grandstands were packed. Over the course of the time that Speed Week happened, it was a little greater than 450,000 people on property. And the thing about it is that when you, I like when you use the word on property. Look how big that place is. On property is a lot of property. And the fact that the place was filled to the rim with brim once again tells me that the message and that the activation and everything is going in the right direction and the product is working. And I think also the fact that you come off of the Daytona race and look, I know the conversations about, running half throttle, running 60, 70% throttle. All I'm going to tell you about that, I'll talk more about that tonight on the Revved Up Live edition that's coming up at 6 p.m. Central on the Facebook page at Revved Up Sports Show and on YouTube at RPM Sports Media. You can catch that live. But look, here's my thought on that. And this is just kind of a little radio tease of what you can get a little bit later on tonight. If we didn't have all of that fancy telemetry that we have now, if we didn't have all this fancy stuff, I would not be coming to you right now on the internet. If we didn't have all of these things that we have right now to where we can see how much throttle's being used, if we can see mile per hour, if we didn't have all of that, I don't care how well you think you know NASCAR, you would not know the difference. When you are stacked 3 wide and running in a pack of 35 cars, whether you're going 65, 70, or 200 miles per hour, you're not going to know the difference unless you have all of that fancy shit in front of you. And you can argue with me all you want, and we can debate that tonight because that show is going to be live a little bit later on this evening. If you didn't know all of that, and if you didn't have interviews with crew chiefs talking about, well, we're in fuel conservation. If you didn't know it, you wouldn't know the difference. I promise you, you would not know the difference. And, to that aspect, you go back and you look, 1989, how did Darrell Waltrip win the 1989 Daytona 500? He sat there going about half speed because he's running out of gas. Everybody pitted. When Richard Petty won the 1981 Daytona 500, how the hell did he win that? He was throttling back because Bobby Allison went and pitted, who had the race dominated, and Petty sitting there throttling back on the gas pedal and won his 7th Daytona 500. This has gone on forever. You take the stages out, it's only going to be more obvious. You don't know when the yellow's coming out. So this is a byproduct of racing right now. And dirt folks, we don't do that on dirt. Yeah, y'all run 20 laps, 30 lap features, maybe 50, 55, 60, 70, 100. And I guarantee if you got a 100 lap dirt race and the pole sitter or whoever is on the front row with the pole sitter that has taken off and jettisoned out from the pack, they're probably throttling back to save gas. We just don't know that. We just don't know that because they're not telling us. And we don't have the telemetry telling us how hard the person's pushing the gas pedal or using the brake or doing both. We don't know. We'll talk about that later. But I just really felt what I felt on Sunday was, and even on Friday and Saturday, it just seemed like a composite group of people enjoying what they were doing, from the fans on site watching the racing that was good in all 3 races. All 3 races were good, in my opinion. The Craftsman Truck Series was always a good race. You know that's going to be a good race. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series was just fantastic with Austin Hill winning yet again. If I was a betting man, which maybe I am, going to Atlanta this weekend, I think I know where I'm going to put my O'Reilly Auto Parts Series money on if I was going to do that. And then with what you had at Daytona. And I think that the good thing about it is, back to the TV ratings, I think in the fact that everybody was able to watch the whole race. They're going to tune in again on Sunday. Haven't looked at the forecast yet. I don't exactly know what's set in Georgia for the weekend. But I think that if you're able to get the same conditions that you had and you get another full race in, I think that you're going to have a lot of maybe some newer fans that they're going to turn that on and they're going to be, hey, this is kind of like what I saw last weekend. because I think that a new or casual race fan would have enjoyed what they saw on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, with Sunday being the key word. If you turn on NASCAR on Sunday, you're going to see a lot of the same product. And I think the way that the schedule shakes itself out is that you know that you're going to have a good race at Atlanta. And once you have that, then you're going to come here to my backyard and you're going to go to Coda, and then you get that. And Coda in and of itself sells itself to the other race, to the newer race fans, just because of the Formula One aspect. And yes, I'm talking about newer race fans. Why am I talking about newer race fans? Because as I've talked about in the past, you can't count on the ones you lost because it's so hard to win them back. Kind of like that my fishing analogy, you know, throwing live bait out into a tank that hadn't been stocked in about 20 years. That's why I'm focusing in on the new people, because that's what's going to get the eyeballs on the product. That's what's going to get people to the racetrack. That's what's going to get eyeballs on, in this case, Fox. But there was a lot to break down from the weekend. And of course, just two major stories outside of the Cup race and everything that happened there. I'll talk about just a couple right here before I button this episode up. First of all, the Natalie Decker situation. Look, man, I'm just like any other American male guy in this world. I love to look at Natalie Decker. I've talked to Natalie Decker. I'm friends with friends of Natalie Decker, and folks are being very hard on her, and understandably. There was a lot of time that transpired in between the time that wreck happened and the time that Natalie Decker made contact there with Sam Mayer. Although he did talk about, and this, and again, I'm not going to sit here and bash Natalie. I absolutely will not do that, because I'll let everybody else do that. That's what the keyboard folks are for. But Sam did talk about, I mean, the car was not drivable. I mean, all of that happened, and he did say in his interview the steering was broken. And if he's going up the track, no brakes, no steering, going back up the track. I'm sure she had time to react. I mean, everybody seems to think that she had time to react. I've never been on the banking at Daytona, but I get it. I get it. The past history of her, there are similar incidents. I will say, well, before I say what I'm going to say, here's Natalie in her post-race interview after the incident there.
He looked pretty stopped at the bottom, and my spotter was just telling me that we were clear up there, everything was good. And then as soon as it looked like we weren't going to be clear anymore, it was like at the last second, my spotter was like, well, there's nothing really we could do about that. And it just sucks. I feel bad for everybody that was involved in that, because it's just a shitty situation. But hopefully there's more on my schedule before Pocono, because I really want to get back up there.
Okay, here's the whole thing with that, and I totally get all of that and everything that she's talking about. I think and again, this goes back to what I was just talking about the whole analogy with having telemetry and having throttle control and having how much brake is being used and speeds and all that stuff. If the radio part is, I think, where Nat did not do herself a favor. And again, in the heat of the battle, it's a very different situation. But that right there was just the bad look on Natalie Decker with all of this. Just what she talked about, the way that she handled that. I mean, that interview right there was great. I mean, that I have no problem with. But it's that other stuff, and it's that. The radio chatter and the way that she handled that supersedes everything else that she could have done, all the damage control and everything else. And that's where, again, racing is so different right now, to where we are privy to all of that. We are privy to every word. And, it's a very fine line. And depending who it is, if a dude did, or something, if that happened to a popular driver, a popular male driver in that same situation, how would we look at it? That's just part of the analogy with the whole thing with Natalie Decker. I think that as it happened, she could have handled that radio part better. But again, you can't control those emotions while they're happening. Does Natalie belong in the series? That's not for me to say. That's not for any of you guys to say, because the whole thing is, we all know that you get into this sport right now and you sustain yourself in this sport by bringing money into the sport. And look, Natalie Decker, Tony Breidinger, these people they've got their ways of attracting sponsors. They've got their ways of bringing sponsors in. And if somebody's going to put them in their car, they're going to put them in their car because they bring money. Yeah, it sucks because I know a lot of great racers that race their asses off all week and on the weekends at dirt tracks and asphalt tracks around the country that maybe have a better ability than them. But those ladies in this case, and the dudes too, they have ways that bring sponsors in and put themselves into those seats. That leads to the second guy that I want to talk about, Cleetus McFarland. You talk about this whole thing with him. Great job in the ARCA race. Not going to discount anything that he did in the ARCA race. But you could say that it's similar situations. And I see, I already know what's going to happen right here in this conversation. I'm going to get, well, Natalie's raced a bunch. She hasn't raced all that much when it comes to these big series. You're going to talk about her record in these big races. Yeah, it's not a very good one, but I saw on Tuesday, I think it was on Tuesday when it dropped, but, Door Bumper Clear, Dirty Mo Media, I mean, they had thoughts on Cleetus McFarland getting behind the wheel of a truck. And I'm going to preface this by saying I think he did a hell of a job in the ARCA race. I will say that again. And he has had good runs in the ARCA race, but this is Door Bumper Clear on Cleetus McFarland. You tell me the difference.
This is going to be very unpopular, and I'm sorry, but what are we doing? Are we trying to get the best race car drivers on the racetrack, or are we trying to get the biggest social media followings?
Yeah, let's just get. I'm going to buy 5 million TikToks, and I'm going to make a bunch of friends and do some street stock racing. And next thing you know, I'm going to be driving a top 5 truck.
A system should not be based on participation. It needs to be based on results. This guy run 2 plate races last year, wrecked in both of them, wrecked half the field in one of them from trying to do a restart. Talking about Cleetus. And then we're just lucky the other night that he didn't wipe out half the truck field, because when he spun, he went down instead of up. I'm sure he's a great guy. He seems like a phenomenal person. He's got great car control. The videos that I watch, he drives anything in the world. He's not ready for what he's doing. I want to make it clear that it's not Cleetus' fault, but it's NASCAR's fault.
At the end of the day, you've got this guy with, a ton of followers that,
he can bring a lot to the sport.
Yeah, he can bring a lot to the sport.
Yeah, but go through the system like we all had, like you had, like Luke has, like run modifieds, run late models, run. Go through the system, learn how to race, do all the things that we all have to do to get to the places. Spend the money like we all had to get to certain spots.
It feels like a movie.
You just don't show up.
It feels like Impractical Jokers, where like there's somebody in a room somewhere being like, okay, now wreck half the field.
This is going to be very unpopular.
And see that to me right there is where you take these two scenarios, and that's where depending on your bias or unbiased, that you're going to look at them differently. And again, tune into Revved Up tonight, Revved Up Sports Show, Facebook page, 6:00 Central, 7:00 Eastern, because we're going to be debating these kind of things and breaking Daytona down in even more detail. But I mean, what's the difference? You had 2 influencers that were racing this weekend. Natalie Decker's an influencer. She happened to be a car racer before she became an influencer. She was, when you talk about, I mean, the whole thing about paying your dues, has she paid her dues? That's for, other people to decide, but she's got a racing history. This isn't somebody that just, was plucked out of a lingerie magazine, then boom, there they are. I mean, we can talk about her short track history or whatever. She has had some success in racing different disciplines of race cars. And then you've got Cleetus here that, I would love to meet the guy, and I have no issue with what he's doing, but I'm just talking about that whole scenario right there. You're debating, what's the difference? What is the difference? You have 2 people that have a lot of influence on people, one more negative than the other. I mean, the other's an absolute rock star. Truck ratings were probably through the roof. And what happens on lap 7 after he's out? How many people quit watching then? How many people didn't give a shit after that? I don't know. So again, we can break that down in more detail, because that's how we're starting your Wednesday morning, with getting you all fired up. Getting you all fired up right here on Dirty Air, talking about the great things about the Daytona 500 and Speed Week. and talking about just the other stories, because that's this dirty air. It's a dirt on sports. It's dirt on racing. Clean air is good. Times like this, dirty air is just a tad bit better. And there's a lot to talk about coming out of Daytona as we get set to head to Atlanta. Thank you all for being a part of DA this morning. I appreciate you guys always taking the time to catch us. If you would, please subscribe and like the YouTube and Instagram pages again. Again, there's the handles on the socials at the Rodney R on X, at the _Rodney R on Instagram. Going to drop you another short before the end of the week right here on Dirty Air. Not sure what we're going to talk about next. Probably still going to be talking about NASCAR, because I know things are about to get real damn exciting as we get set to head to Atlanta, GA. Bad Street, Atlanta, GA. Off we go for some NASCAR racing. All right, guys. You'll have a great hump day. See you on Rev'd Up tonight. Check out the show. It's going to be live right here.